Prime-time local news, serving the Lakeland and Midwest regions.
Lloydminster City Council reached a final verdict regarding the municipal development plan following yesterday's City Council meeting. Our Callan Dunlop has more.
After countless revisions and public scrutiny, the municipal development plan for Lloydminster has finally been approved. Council held one last public hearing before the vote, where all members of council were in favor of the bylaw.
I think there's been a lot of clarity provided to many people. There are people that left with still a feeling that the MDP is not a good document for our city, even though we've had one since 2013, and this is a revision, the update to accommodate the annexed lands in the city. Certainly, we're planning for growth. We want to see the city continue to grow.
The MDP revisions allow the city to more properly coordinate with developers with the end goal of providing growth to Lloydminster.
If somebody comes to town and wants to develop something in our community which helps offset people's personal taxes, they're going to say to us, where's your plan? How are you guys going to develop your city? Do I want to spend multi-millions of dollars investing in your city here? Well, here's the plan. I hope that people's fears have been alleviated. These things are not set in stone either. They are completely, we've done how many MDP amendments to the 2013 MDP since 2016? If our planning developer said we average 12 a year, that tells you how many times we've amended it. So there's room for growth, there's room for amendment.
Council also approved the annual mill rate bylaw, seeing a 4.5% increase, with tax notices arriving Friday, June 2nd. Callan Dunlop, Primetime, Local News.
The Big Color Run is being brought back to Mother Teresa after a very successful event last year. Students are preparing and showing excitement for the upcoming run, and our Shelby Clark has more in this week's Beyond the Classroom.
This will be the third annual year for this family fun event. Parents and kids can walk or run for 3 kilometers to fundraise towards Mother Teresa's outdoor playground.
This is our outdoor classroom. We actually have a garden that was just planted by our grade 1. So as a school community, we plant a garden. Our kids get to enjoy this space for learning math, art, different skills like that. We do right out here in our playground. We just need an updated playground to add to this area.
Last year, over 170 community members registered to participate in the run and raised over $2,000 for their outdoor space. Families always have a blast during this event, and this year's will be even bigger and better than before.
It's a really fun event that is minimal cost for families all throughout Lloydminster to come and just celebrate everything, like our school, our community. It's a really fun day. We do have door prizes that will be available on that day, so when you show up, you get your name entered for a draw. In the past, we have had past students come back to visit us, which is really awesome, as well as just community members. Anyone is welcome.
1, 2, 3, go!
The grade 1s and 2s at Mother Teresa are especially excited by making posters and seeing their favorite colors during the run.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue? Awesome. Why is that your favorite color?
Because I like Toronto and Oilers.
They now hope to have 200 members for this year, with the run taking place at Mother Teresa on Saturday, June 3rd. People can find more info on their Facebook page, and organizers say they've already received strong support from businesses in the community.
Condro Electric is our gold sponsor for our event. We have some silver sponsors. Kenworth, Robinson Construction, and Skyline Refrigeration are our silver sponsors. And then we have Walking on Water and House of Stitches that have also donated to make this event possible. And we also have Co-op, who donates the water for our event, and Sobeys helps to donate some cookies and juice for after the event.
And that's it in this week's Beyond the Classroom.
Lakeland College's doors are open for program info sessions on March 3rd and 10th. RSVP now at lakelandcollege.ca/info sessions.
We are continuing our PTLN profiles with our local candidates in the lead up to Alberta Votes 2023. Today we hear from the Wild Rose Loyalty Coalition candidate. And we're continuing our discussion with the candidates running to be the next MLA for Vermilion, Lloydminster, Wainwright. And we have Danny Hozak here. He's from the Wild Rose Loyalty Coalition. Thanks for taking some time to talk with us, Danny.
Thanks for taking time to visit with me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's exciting. So first of all, we'll get, I think a lot of people that are politically inclined in this area may know a little bit about you. But if they don't, let's give people a chance to learn a little more about Danny.
Well, I've lived and farmed with my wife and family in the Streamstown area, all of my life up until now. And I was the Wild Rose candidate in 2012 and 2015. I was a good supporter of the UCP, and then we look at some of the things that, in all honesty, we'll get to this, I guess, in a few minutes. Jason Kenney came in promising to do something about equalization and promising to bring in effective recall, and he hasn't. And we think we need to hold him to account for not keeping his promises. And so we thought, well, we'll get our old Wild Rose party going, and we will hold them to account.
So yeah, talk to me a little bit about, first of all, why now are you running to be MLA for this area, and why the Wild Rose Loyalty Coalition? Just talk to me a little bit more about that organization.
Well, the Wild Rose Loyalty Coalition, we're basically a grassroots organization. And I mean, the main plank in our platform is going to be, if you can't fire them, don't hire them. And I mean, Jason Kenney knew that, and he got elected last time on, two things, dealing with, talking tough with standing up to Ottawa on equalization and bringing in recall. But the recall that he brought in isn't effective recall. And one of the things that I've done between 12 and now is we started a group called the Economic Education Association, and we talk about the essentials of freedom and the things you have to do to defend and maintain freedom. And we've been saying it's a lot easier to stay out of trouble than it is to get out of trouble. And one of our more sought after speakers, his name is Andrew Lawton, he said if you study it, like, we are increasingly being governed by people who have spent more time thinking about how to get elected than thinking about how to govern. And Jason Kenney did a good job of getting elected, talking about standing up to Ottawa and bringing in effective recall. But when you look at it, all he did was he sent some mean letters to Ottawa, and the recall that he brought in wasn't functional. So he basically, I would say he didn't live up to his promises. And so we want to hold him to account for not living up to their promises. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah. So let me ask you about this, because I think there was a lot of people inside of the UCP that weren't happy with Jason Kenney and his leadership. He narrowly wins that leadership vote, resigns. Now we have Danielle Smith as Premier. Do you have issues with some things that she's done in her short time as Premier also that is leading you to not want to support the UCP?
Well, yes. Two things. One, I mean, she's there. I mean, and she's been the premier for 6 or 7 months.
Yeah.
And we all know that, and now they're coming out with this, be sure you don't split the vote, which is a strategy to get elected. It's not a strategy to govern well. And if we end up with a split vote, there'll be one person and one party that need to be held to, will be responsible for that. And it's Danielle Smith and the UCP party, because they've had 6 months, like they all know, they've sat there, and my good friend Garth has sat there for 4 years, and they had recall, but it's not a functional recall. In Lloydminster, our recall, our recall plan is 50% plus one of the people who vote can sign a petition and force you to step down and run in a by-election. So in Lloydminster, mostly 12,000 people vote, so 6,000 plus one could force you to step down and defend yourself in a by-election. The UCP's recall would take about 16,000 signatures, which is, you might be able to get 6,000 people if enough people were mad, but getting 16,000, it's not possible, you know what I mean? And so it's not functional recall. So now all of a sudden they're worried about a split vote. If they'd have brought in functional recall, we wouldn't have had to worry about that, and we wouldn't have been sort of holding our fingers, crossing our fingers, praying that we don't get into some, aberration where we end up with the NDP again.
So it really seems like you want to bring forward a lot of grassroots policies that people in this riding. This is a conservative stronghold. So is that something that's appealing? You think will be appealing to voters, because it's a conservative stronghold, and it seems like we have quite a few different candidates on the ballot that are more conservative in nature. But do you feel like you're that kind of grassroots option?
Well, we are, and I also think our leader, Paul Himon, his grandfather was the provincial treasurer under, William Aberhart. He has spent his life thinking about how to govern. and this comes back to our Andrew Lawton quote about saying, we're being governed by people who've all they've ever studied is how to get elected. And Jason Kenney turned out was really good at getting elected. But then when it came time to govern, he was almost hopeless, I guess it's fair to say, you know what I mean? And he's gone. And so, like, to me, our party, I think we've spent an awful lot of time thinking about how to govern. And I mean, Paul has done a tremendous lot of work on that. And one of the things, he just thinks about it constantly. And one of the things that I want to talk about, and he brought it up in 2005. When he got elected in 2004, he went to the legislature, he went to the finance department, he said, I'd like to know how many dollars in taxes are paid in each constituency. So they printed them off. And the numbers are absolutely staggering how much money comes out of some of these communities. And when you look at it, like Lloydminster, our constituency, we are to Edmonton as Alberta is to Ottawa. We all look at Ottawa and we say we send them way more money than is our share, and then we have to beg to get some of it back. Well, provincially we're the same way. Our constituency sends way more money to Edmonton, and then we have to beg to get a little bit back to fix the hospital or update an old folks home or fix the roads. And so anyway, we've got all those numbers. They should be available to all of us. But a couple of years later, Paul went back and said, I'd like to get the updated list. They said, oh, we don't give that information out anymore. And the reason they don't give that information out anymore is because we would be offended here if we knew how much we sent up and how little a percentage of that we got back.
All right, Danny. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us. I know just a short little interview here, but it's great to be able to find out a little bit more about what you want to do if you're elected as MLA.
I think I've outlined some of the things that we'd like to touch on, which I don't think anyone else is talking about. So again, our leader is Paul Himmen, and I appreciate you taking time to visit with me, and don't forget to vote.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our series with the candidates will continue on the show on Thursday. The Lloydminster Chamber of Commerce is holding an all-candidates forum tonight starting at 6:30 at the WLS Convention Center. As we move over to sports now, the Lloydminster Extreme season is underway in the Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League. Here's Thomas Wildman with more.
The Lloydminster Extreme are off to a strong start to their season with 4 wins, but dropping their most recent game against the Parkland Posse. Head coach Graham Murray is confident his team can get back on track.
We're 4-1 right now. We dropped a game to Parkland that, it was our ball movement and inability to score on that one goalie. But we got Sylvan Lake and Red Deer this weekend. Both should be good teams. But I think we are one of the top teams in the league, and we should either win the conference or be second place, 1 or 2.
The Extreme were a strong team last year, making it all the way to the finals, but falling just short. The team is going to work hard on their weaknesses in order to claim the championship title.
As of right now, I think it's just loose balls. We're just not winning those battles. That's why we lost our last game. We just need to get those to get more offensive and defensive stops, and I think that's our main thing right now.
One of the strengths of the Extreme is their high-flying offense, which is led by the leading scorer of the North Division from last year, Jaden Plamondon. He has once again returned to the team and is leading the division once again with 32 points this year. What matters most to him, though, is the team win and capturing the ultimate glory.
I want to win a chip. I want to win provincials. That's the goal, for sure. Yeah.
Thomas Wildman, Primetime, Local News.
And now it's time for us to check in once again with Shelby Clark for a look at weather.
Thanks so much again there, Mr. Jace Mackey. Yes, now taking another extended look at your weather forecast. We'll be starting off with our central zone of the provinces for our Wednesday and what we are just sitting at. We are kind of matching with the temperatures that we were seeing for the past couple days this week already. Just getting closer to that 20-degree mark, but we only seem to be seeing one spot that is just hitting it, and that's in Edmonton. The rest are just sitting at those teens. We have, for the most part, most are just sitting at 18 degrees on the Alberta side, and then we have some that are slightly cooler as we're just hitting 16 in Jasper Jasper 14 and 15, with Edson and Whitecourt, and Cold Lake is now just sitting at 17. So not looking too bad on our Alberta side. Now as you go over to our Saskatchewan side, they are looking slightly cooler in some of these areas compared to our Alberta side, especially with North Battleford and Meadow Lake still sitting at that 12 and 13, and then we start to warm up from there. 16 in Saskatoon, while it is 19 in Prince Albert, and Melfort seems to be the only spot just hitting that 20-degree mark. Going over to our northern zone now, they are matching with us a lot more. They aren't seeing those single digits anymore in some of these spots as they were seeing earlier on in the week. Now they are warming up slightly and getting closer to that 20-degree point again, as we are just looking at 18 in Flin Flon. They're just a couple degrees off. 17 up in Stony Rapids. We have a couple there just sitting at 16 degrees, and most of them are now just sitting at 14. And going back over to Alberta's side here in our northern zone, they have warmed up slightly as well from what they were looking at yesterday, especially down in this area here as they were for some of these spots, just seeing those single digits, and now they have started to warm it back up. 10 degrees in Slave Lake, while it is 15 and 18 with Grand Prairie and Peace River, and for the most part they are just sitting at 15 with Fort Chipewyan and High Level, seems to be the most popular temperature on this side, and then we have Fort McMurray in the middle there at 16 degrees. And going over to our southern zone, they of course are seeing slightly warmer conditions than what we have been looking in our northern and our central area. So here in our southern zone on our Alberta side, most of them are just sitting at 19, so just right underneath that 20-degree mark. We have 18 in Medicine Hat, and then Coronation is slightly cooler, now just sitting at 16. And going back over to our Saskatchewan side, they continue to see a lot warmer conditions than what we have been looking at in our central and our northern zone, especially on this side in our southern zone, as they are still at those mid-20s for the most part. 25-26 seems to be the warmest condition with Moose Jaw and Regina, as they are even getting closer to that 30-degree mark. And then we have 22 here in Swift Current, 24 in Estevan now, as Yorkton is just a degree underneath, and then Kindersley is complete opposite, now just sitting at 14, as they are matching more with us here on our Alberta side. But now as we look at some temperatures that we are expecting tonight and overnight as we head into tomorrow on this list in our surrounding area, we have some spots that will be expecting those double digits once again as we cool down. Provost and Paradise Hill with a low of 10, and the rest are just a couple degrees underneath. Bonnyville, Meadow Lake will be expecting a low of 9, and Isla Cross will be expecting a low of that 8-degree mark. So we will be cooling down only slightly tonight, expecting a warm evening once again. And for the most part on this list, we won't be seeing a high chance of some precipitation. It will just be more cloudier conditions, unfortunately. Hopefully we will be seeing some precipitation as we lead on more through the week into the weekend. Looking at our hourly forecast for our Thursday in the border city tomorrow, we will be starting off slightly cooler at that 9-degree mark, and for our midday high, we will be hitting that 19 to 20 degrees, so we will be warming up, kind of matching for what we are seeing today, and we won't be cooling down by too much tomorrow evening, because as we head on through the week past Thursday, we'll warm up once again to 22 Friday as we head off into the weekend. So we will be seeing those 20-degree marks once again as we start off Friday with a mixture of some sun and cloud, even hitting 25 Saturday with a much more sunnier day. And I know it's always nice to see, some sunny days and warm days, but hopefully we will be seeing that precipitation as it kind of helps with these dry conditions, because as we end off the weekend heading into next week with Monday, we will be looking at 25 once again, but around a 60% chance of some rainfall, and hopefully that will be hitting for sure. And we will hit next Tuesday with 23, back to a mixture of some sun and cloud, and praying that we will be getting more rainfall next Wednesday. And that's all I have for now. Our Jason Mackey will have our news coming up after the break.
We're back again this week with Stephanie Dobson. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator at Hankett Divorce Law and Mediation here in Lloydminster, back for another episode of Healthy Thriving Family After Divorce. And Stephanie, we are continuing the theme talking about child support. And this time we're talking about post-secondary education and how that affects child support. So basically, let's get right to it. So what are the requirements regarding child support if you have a child who is continuing with post-secondary education?
Stacey, I have to start by saying there is no shortage of topics with respect to child support. And so I'm thankful that we picked sort of this as a monthly theme for May, because now we have 5 weeks that we can do this. There's just so many things to talk about. So let's first remind our viewers that this topic of child support is covered by both federal and provincial laws. So for families who are married and who are seeking a divorce, there's the Federal Divorce Act, and then there's provincial legislation, both in Alberta and Saskatchewan, that applies to unmarried parents or to married parents who aren't necessarily looking to get a divorce. So today, of course, we're going to cover how it works in each of these situations. So generally speaking, in all of these jurisdictions, so Alberta, Saskatchewan, and federally, for the Divorce Act, it works very similar. So children who are over the age of majority are entitled to support by their parents, provided that they're attending a post-secondary education institution on a full-time basis. And of course, this is for separated and divorced parents. So, and the age of majority in both provinces, of course, is 18. So once we know that a child fits under that eligible category, then we go deeper, take a bit of a deeper dive and look at the amount that would be payable.
Okay, and how do the calculations work for that then, Stephanie?
So, of course, in previous episodes, we've talked about how child support more generally works. So our viewers may recall that it's divided into two types of payments. So there's the base monthly payment, which is intended to cover food, clothing, and shelter. And then for post-secondary specifically, we have certain categories of expenses. Our viewers may recall Section 7 expenses, or the extras, which are shareable between parents based on each of their income levels. So if there's a child who's over point for that base support, the food, clothing, and shelter one, is still those child support tables, so those formulas. Then the question will turn to the facts of that particular situation. So, for example, for residents, where does your child plan on living while they're going to school? Are they living at home with a parent? Are they living on campus, living in an apartment? And parents will also need to have a look at how much is available in the education savings, scholarships, bursaries, student loans, and other kind of sources of funding for them. So this is really, you can tell that this would be very quickly, will change on the set of facts based on what the child is actually planning on doing for their post-secondary. So then the next category, so we've got that base support, and then the next category is, of course, the expenses that are shared. So the expenses would be things like tuition and books, but certainly can include more things than that, depending on the child's situation.
So there's obviously a lot involved, and it's not cheap to go to post-secondary institutions. So when should parents start thinking about saving and planning for this?
Well, one of the things in talking with my American friends is certainly Canadian parents and Canadian students are, of course, a lot luckier with the cost here, but it's still, you're right, it is still quite a cost for that post-secondary education. So I'd say that there's really two aspects for this. So let's lump it into the saving for post-secondary and then the actual expenses, so the expenditure of the money for post-secondary. So on the savings aspect, so many parents will start an RESP, Registered Education Savings Plan, for the children while they're still together. And some parents even continue these contributions after separation. So let's think of a few issues with respect to these RESPs. First of all, the child support guidelines contains no obligation at all to save for post-secondary education expenses, but there's an obligation to contribute. So it's a bit of a catch-22 here. Second, if parents have accumulated funds in these RESPs prior to the separation, that account itself is actually the divisible family property. So it's actually parents' money, not the children's money. However, there's lots of parents that I work with that say, no, let's actually just earmark that for the kids' education. We give that as to the kids as theirs. If parents contribute after separation, here's a problem that can arise, is what if they contribute unequally? So then when we get to the actual expenditure, we got to figure out who contributed what to this RESP, or the savings account. So there's some issues on the savings piece, and of course that all gets worked out through the negotiations. So then we talked about the saving. Now let's talk about the spending. So once the actual spending of the money comes, I always recommend that it's best if we start those discussions in about February, March-ish of the child's grade 12 year. Because then once their plans start to take shape, they've applied, maybe they've got into an institution or two, then we can actually start making the appropriate plans based on the actual place. Like I said before, are they going to go to a local community college or a university where they have to move away? So it's not a one size fits all, but the best thing we can do is plan ahead.
Well, lots of things to consider, Stephanie. Thank you so much again for joining us this week. And we will wrap up our theme of child support next week, and we'll speak with you then.
Thanks, Stacey.
Furniture set and design supplied by Furniture Gallery, downtown Lloydminster.
In my heart, I feel like we ain't finished. I've been asking everyone, and man, I hope that they're all wrong. 'Cause you're a once in a lifetime, and I can't move on. If these streets could talk, they'd tell me which way I should go.
I'm happy to be joined today on Primetime Local News by Dan Davidson. Dan, we've spoken to you many, many times, and you always have something exciting going on. Now we're going to talk about your latest video, If These Streets Could Talk, which it's being called an 80s inspired video and song. So tell me a little bit about why you went that route this time.
It's hard to say. I guess I was just experimenting. I feel like a lot of artists get afraid to try things, and I just don't want to get trapped in that thing where I'm always repeating myself. I feel like we owe it to music fans out there as artists to try and reinvent ourselves and push some limits and introduce some new flavors and kind of explore creatively. So yeah, I guess a lot of the music I've been listening to over the last year or so has just been kind of from that 80s Americana pop world, and it's sunk its way into my country songwriting, and it's really interesting, and I'm actually really, really excited about it, getting some great feedback, and it's fun to paint with some new colors.
Did you write the song on your own, or did you have some help with this one?
Yeah, I wrote this one with Tim Hicks and with a Canadian in Nashville named Dave Thompson, who's my co-producer on the track. So it's really great. I've written a lot with Tim this year, and he's a pretty well-known artist in Canada, and we've really hit it off and created some cool music that hopefully people see both from his side and from my side in the coming months here.
Well, tell me about the video, Dan. It's a little bit different from what we're used to seeing from Dan Davidson. Although, you've got your side group with where you have kind of the bluegrass metal death mix and your country stuff and rock. And this video has some contemporary dance mixed into it. And it's a little bit different. So tell me about how the idea came together for the video.
Yeah, I feel like, on this record coming up here, it's sounding a little bit more shiny and cinematic and just like more larger than life, and I really wanted to elevate the perception of the project. And while I have a lot of fun doing those wacky videos that are run and gun and just kind of a little bit zany, I just thought it was maybe time to freshen up a little bit and try something a little bit more not serious, but just a little more artistic, I think. And so we came up with this concept. We wanted to have like a lot of light and bright and white colors and kind of make it washy and influenced by a lot of 80s music videos. Like there's a lot of elements that I've been fighting to not do my entire creative life that come from the 80s, and now I find myself embracing them, But it was funny because I really wanted to have a dance piece in the video, and we didn't have a dancer until like 2 days before. And there was a country fan that was going to an event that I was playing, and she added me on Instagram, and I saw that in her profile photo she had a picture of her dancing, and like randomly I reached out and said, "Hey, I see that you're a dancer. What are the odds that you want to be in a music video?" And so we just lucked out, and we came across this girl from Calgary, Lena Anderson, who dances for the Roughnecks and for the Stampeders, and she's just super talented and made the day easy. So it was cool. It was an interesting thing to do in a country video.
So the next singles that'll be coming out, Dan, are they all going to be along this line, or are you mixing things up a little bit?
Yeah, I think they all related to this kind of a vibe. It's definitely feel-good summertime kind of stuff. This next song that we're going to be releasing in July is going to be called He Met a Girl, and then the record probably towards October, November is going to be called 1980 something.
So what about the summer? I know you're working hard on this coming up, but what about tour dates, and where can we see Dan Davidson over the next few months?
Yeah, well, we get started next month, starting to play a little bit, and some private gigs. So it's great because we get to warm up for the big festivals. But I'm going to be doing the Calgary Stampede. I'm going to be at the Pigeon Lake Music Festival, and I'll be out in BC in Penticton for the 97 South Songwriters Festival. I'm going to be at Boots and Hearts in Ontario. Lots going on, and then I'm headed back to Australia for our second tour down there at the end of August, and we get to play two of their biggest festivals, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, Dan, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. We're looking forward to seeing more videos and the album coming out as well. So thanks again for chatting with us, and good luck with everything over the summer.
Well, thanks for having me. It's nice to see you again.
Ending off with another quick look at your 7-day forecast. We will be looking at that 19 tomorrow, so not warming up by too much from what we have been seeing for the past couple days, but we will be seeing another day of mixture of some sun and cloud for tomorrow. Then we will be warming up for Friday as we head off into the weekend, hitting that 20-degree mark on Friday to start it off. Hopefully we will be seeing some precipitation sooner rather than later, but we will be expecting some sunnier days ahead with 25, 24 Saturday and Sunday. So expecting a beautiful weekend. We shall see with the smoke air quality conditions outside. Hopefully this starts to ease up a bit more with the wind outside. And then as we head into next week, we will hopefully that 60% chance of precipitation on Monday will actually come, and we will be seeing a warm day that day regardless at 25, and seeing even warmer days as we head into next Tuesday and Wednesday, and expecting some more rainfall next Wednesday.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Shelby. Some wonderful news in the forecast there, and thank you all for joining us for this edition of Primetime Local News. Have a great night, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow.